No, I think that's even worse.
This broadcast is live. There we go. So, welcome all to the Back to Your Booth, the Narrators of LitRPG, the voices we love. And I'm just going to go into this. So, going to introduce each person, or I'll introduce you. You can take a minute or two to introduce yourself and tell everyone about yourself. So I'm going to do ladies first and do Andrea Parsneau.
Hello, I'm Andrea Parsneau, otherwise known as Andy. I am a narrator that works in LitRPG and harem and stuff like that, and I'm happy to be here.
I understand, but I can't hear anyone.
I'm gonna. Luke, are you good, or do you need a minute? I was gonna go with you next.
I'm making sure I'm on. Yeah,
you're on.
Hello,
We're live.
If you can hear me,
yes, go right
yes,
ahead.
Hi.
Introduce yourself.
Good. Thank you. I'm Luke Daniels. Happy to be here. Happy to be invited and getting to do something fun on what is it? Saturday? Yeah,
so.
Saturday night.
Maybe.
Okay. So Steve. We have Steve Campbell here.
I'm Steve Campbell, and I'm the resident Canadian, I guess you could say. I do a lot of work in LitRPG, and yeah, I'm just super happy to be here with some awesome people. I love these guys.
And we got Travis Baldree.
Hi, I'm Travis. I also narrate books. Surprise. Also very happy to be here.
That is brand new information.
I know.
I didn't know you narrated. Travis, why didn't you tell me? All this time I've known you.
We've had so much in common.
We could have been talking about this.
I was here. I mean, it was.
We don't have a talkative bunch here tonight, people. I do want to let you all know that tonight's panel is on your own time. There is no payment for how you are going to be talking tonight. We are not paying you for this hour.
We can only use one voice.
Someone lied.
That is not what it said in my contract.
No, I was very specific about the number of M&Ms I was going to require. And if
this is a royalty share panel.
It's a royalty share panel. I like that.
So again, thank you. Did we just lose Luke?
I think he's still working on his Wi-Fi.
There we go. He was going for the mood lighting.
Ooh, it's like special effects.
I just kind of want to watch this for a moment.
This is actually pretty great.
I like how Luke likes to be really unique. He needs to be sideways as opposed to everyone else who's vertical. He has to be horizontal.
I like how his data cut out only when he was horizontal, though.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to.
He got booted from his Wi-Fi again.
He's looking mad David Blaney in that screenshot, though. Like, that is amazing.
There are a couple.
Maybe he is David Blaine, and this is part of his illusion, and it's going to be.
Oh my gosh! It's been a long con all along.
Okay, so we might have lost Luke. He was having some technical difficulties with his Wi-Fi. It was not wanting to cooperate with him. So I am going to give it a minute to see if he comes back on. And as we can see some of the comments coming through, apparently you guys are some of the favorites for the people. You talk to them, they're your faves. They're saying hi to wonderful people. And they are loving the sound quality of this stream because we have had that conversation already. Welcome back.
If we can't pull off decent sound quality for the stream, we might have bigger problems.
Am I back on?
Yes,
just
you are.
You're
Yay! Back on. Sorry, guys. We switched phones. I think it's just the internet connection on my end, but that's my fault. My bad.
No worries. We gave it a second just to see if you could come back to us. So we do have a couple of questions that were submitted beforehand on both Facebook and Discord, and then also any that come in through the chat. We will try to get to them all. We're already starting off with a handful of questions. So getting right into it, what is the most difficult accent for you, and can you give us an example of it? Not starting with
my normal voice.
Talking in
seems
general.
Like my normal voice sometimes is the hardest.
Well, you were mentioning
on something
one time, Luke, that what drives you nuts is having to say chapter without your mid what is it? Your Midwestern accent coming out in that
Chapter.
chapter.
Yeah, chapter. It drives me crazy. I hear it in every time. But then if I try to change it, I'm like, it sounds affected. If I'm like chapter. So yeah, my normal Midwest voice comes out. So maintaining my own like grassroots, not dipping into that when I'm just trying to tell the story. I think that's probably hard.
My problem is always two accents together. There's like a couple of pairs of accents that if characters have them, they just become a total soup. So if it's like German and French, or if it's Russian and Scottish, for some reason,
Russian and
I've just
Scottish,
sort of
yo.
given
That's
this
funny.
weird,
They're actually very
mushed up.
close.
Yeah, they've got a lot of commonalities, and I start blending them together, and my brain basically just melts down.
I complain about one where
accent
go ahead,
Go
Andy.
ahead. Oh man, I knew that was going to happen. I knew it was a matter of time until we started talking over each other. I'm sorry, Steve.
That's okay. You go right ahead.
No, I was going to say the hardest accent's always the accent you don't know. That's the one character, like the one bit side character that you have to. That's it. They have the specified accent, and it's not enough to be like, no, I don't think that book's a good idea because it's got somebody with a this accent in it. And you have to make that call like, can I fake it enough? Somebody just sat down at the kitchen table. Sorry. It's a very loud rumbling noise. You have to make the call. Do I try to do this like Italian accent and fake something? Or do I just completely ignore the actual written text for the character she says in her thick Italian accent? That it's like, well, now you have to do something, but I can't do an Italian accent. So what do you do? So I just come up with something that's reasonably close without being just horrifically insulting and sounding like Mario. And I'll just try. And that's it. And to just hope this person does not become a major character in the next book. That's the only hope.
I think that's a good point, though, especially now in our day and age, doing accents has kind of changed a little bit. Is that I think people should be respectful and always have been, but it's a lot more. You think about it a lot more. At least I think about it a lot more of like, should I do it as the stereotypical Mario, or like, do I need to add some nuance there, or is that rude? Like, so I never want to be that way, but then they're like in their thick Italian accent, and you're like, well, let's let her rip.
Exactly.
I like the unplaceable accents.
Yeah.
Yes.
Couldn't quite tell where it was from. Those are always good to hit.
That's why I like
Actually can be
sci-fi
wrong.
and fantasy and LitCon, because of that. You can kind of make up your own. Yeah, good point.
That's what I love about being able to do a lot of lit RPG and fantasy, where they're like, well, that doesn't sound British. And I'm like, well, guess what? It's not. It's Brintashi. So screw you. Like
Exactly.
you can
It's
just
not
do whatever
Irish.
you want.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm actually working on a book right now. It's book 2 in a series. And my Achilles heel has always been the Australian accent. And there's one character in there, Blaze, that always talks in a third person. And he has a really thick Australian accent, and I have a really hard time doing it. So it's a nightmare for me.
I found that too. Australian was hard. South African and Welsh are the ones that I hope I never have to encounter. Like South African and Welsh. I listen to them and I'm like, I just can't quite pick up what those notes are.
You can always hear it when you hear it. You can tell.
Copley, like that's all I can do.
Yeah, you can always tell when you hear it, and you're like, "Oh, I know that accent." But then to be able to replicate it, you're just like, "Wait, what? What do they do again? What was that? How do they inflect
South
that?"
African is like if you took a British RP accent and smushed it with an Australian, like they had sex,
like,
and then they had
New Zealand,
the South African
New Zealand.
accent.
It's got that weird kind of up in the nose of the New Zealand. It's really
and then they have the Afrikaan kind
Africa.
of. Yeah.
I just watch a lot of Flight of the Conchords whenever I need to think about New Zealand accents, and then I'm in there. That's in there like swimwear.
I did a series for Kevin Hearn where it was they're Tasmanian, and I was like, okay, so is Tasmanian really that different from Australian? Can I just try to do Australian? Like that was how nuanced do I need to be for 18 different characters all speaking Tasmanian dialects? There's low guy, there's high girl, there's rough voice guy, there's scratchy. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing when you get into an accent and then you feel like you get it nailed down for a particular voice, and then you have another character that has that same accent, but it's a very different character. And you're like, every time you try and springboard into that accent, you go into that old character, and now you have to try and it adds a whole new element into it when you're trying to develop more of a broader toolbox with your characters.
Do you ever, like, when you're doing fantasy, I'll sometimes throw in an accent that I'm purposely wanting to work on
100%.
as a way to force myself to do it. Like, it's fantasy, so I have a gamut of things that I can do, and it makes sense within the world. So I'm like, we really need to let's try that. You've been trying it a couple times and you seem to be getting something. Let's see it. I kind of think of it as like I have a cast in my head that I can put them in places. So I was like, you know what? You did really good in that bit part in that last book. I'm going to give you the best friend role in this book. But if you fuck up or you're too one note, sorry, I don't know if we can do that. Then you're back to the
You're
chorus.
going back to the bench.
Yeah.
I had a book that I was doing where a guy was a necromancer, god of death assailant, and so he was every other scene he was killing people every other scene. He would meet a group of people, mercenaries, bandits, whatever, and he'd talk with them for about 5 seconds. They'd have a couple of lines, and then he'd kill them, and then move on to the next one, and he'd kill them. And so when I hit I think it was like 3/4 of the way through the second book, I'm like, okay, we have another group of randos that are showing up. I need a new, and I was like, they're mercenaries, so we don't know where they're from. And one of the characters, he had said "a" at the end of his sentence, and I was like, time to whip out the Canadian, this guy. And so I was doing it live on Discord, and I was like, maybe we could do like a SpongeBob Canadian. So we had kind of this SpongeBob voice, but he was Canadian, so when he talked, it was kind of that sound. And so I said to the people on Discord, I'm only doing this if you review the book and you say that you love the Canadian Guard. It's the only way that's going to work, because otherwise nobody's going to know what the hell I was doing with that voice.
That's so meta.
In Wandering In, there's a whole race. I've told this story before on another panel. There's this whole race of like drakes that live in there's drakes where she is originally, and then there's the drakes of the walled city. And the first interaction that the characters have, like that you see these drakes, is one of them's yelling down from the wall, basically saying they weren't going to let them in. And it was kind of this mildly comedic thing going on, and they're called Lords of the Wall. And so when it happened, and I ran into the first character that was from there, it was they had hissing S's, and then also they got the French accent. So canonically, those drakes are Monty Python's people in the castle. So all of them talk like that with hissing S's in a French accent. And I both loved it and hated it at the same time, because it's so hard to do. But I loved how it sounded, because their dialogue is so like pompous that it comes off exactly like those French people in the Monty Python Quest for the Holy Grail, like the ones on the castle. I felt in your general direction. Those guys,
right?
That they came out, they sound exactly like that. So I regret that decision, but also I love it every time they show up in the books. It's so hard, but it's so funny to me, and it canonically worked perfectly, and everybody for the most part likes it.
So going off of this question, which was, your most difficult, now what is your absolutely favorite
accent or voice?
I don't know. It just says character voice. There you go. Which character voice was your absolute favorite to do, and why?
Mine changes. I tend to, like I said, I like ones for a while and then I get tired of it. So I went through a whole period where like everybody was this guy and he was like kind of from Family Guy, but whatever. Like all secondary characters are that way. And I was like, I like that. And then I was like, okay, you're using that a lot. So then I try to find something else. I enjoy the Australian accent now, although for like 6 years, it was the bane of my existence. So that's one that now, like slipping into it, feels like if you couldn't do a sit-up before and you can do a sit-up, you're like, damn, I can do a sit-up. It feels so good. So, yeah.
I think my favorite voices are always tied to some character. Like, I don't like them as much in isolation. If it's just the lines they get in combination with the voice is super fun to do.
Yeah.
So Orthos in Will White's books is great. He's got a big he's a 2-ton dragon or a 2-ton turtle that's on fire. and he gets lots of really funny lines. So he's really, really enjoyable to do. And Frank the Axe in Kyle Kieran's Shadeslinger books is really fun to do because his lines are freaking hysterical, and he basically sounds like Danny DeVito. He's really fun to do. In isolation, without the lines, none of them would be as fun. But
Yeah.
with the lines, they're awesome.
Steve?
Well, I was so waiting for Andy to go because I knew I was
Oh
like,
no,
"I'm not
I'm
going to interrupt you
going
this
this way.
time."
I'm doing it this round now.
Yeah, I'm kind of echoing off of what Luke and Travis have said, because it's so much more than just the voice. It's the lines that they get, or the way that you relate to a particular character. And one for me in particular was Bancroft from Guildcore, where when I was prepping the book, I immediately knew exactly what that character was going to sound like, and I just had so much fun anytime that he came onto scene. I knew exactly. I didn't have to wonder how he would say something or what he would do in a particular situation. It was just so innately natural for me to hit his voice that I never struggled with it at all. And then the other one that I had a lot of fun with was one where there was an alien that was, the whole race were super arrogant assholes, and they felt like they should be able to dominate the entire world, and they looked down on Earthlings like super hardcore. And they were tiny. The only way that they had powers was they were able to like mind control people. So I thought, they're Marvin the Martian. They're totally Marvin the Martian. So I just had to be, you're going to have to get my accelerator. And so he would have this voice going through the whole thing. And it was so much fun to get to play with that, because I got to do something that was really, really awesome and part of my childhood, and I loved it.
Mine was Popper from Dominion of Blades. It's one of the first books that I did, and I think I like it so much because it was the first time I made like a super strong character choice and like stuck with it. And Popper was so distinctive. He's this 48-year-old guy trapped in a 7-year-old girl's body in a game. And so
he had this like working class accent, and he fucking cussed all the time, but he sounded like a little girl. So it was funny as shit.
He was always sassy. He was always funny to me. Like he electively wore the dress after, like he never changed. Like he could have taken off the pink dress and put on boy clothes or something, but nope, wore a pink dress and carried a battle axe on the back of a unicorn hippo. So like a hippocorn. I think it's like Travis said, it's so tied to the character. That character made me laugh, and I really loved him. So that voice was like the first time I really made a big choice for a character, and I think it went good. And I just really liked the character. He made me laugh. So that that was one of the big things. Like that was my favorite probably. And I've had more favorites since then, but that's I think that's my first favorite. I'll put it that way.
And you have a few fans of Popper too in the chat. So there's a Facebook question is, what is the largest number of different voices you have done for one book? I'm going to start with Andy this time.
For one book or one series?
Let's go with either.
One book, Aether's Revival, I think topped out at 120. Yeah, Aether's Revival was about 120, I think. It might have been 115. I can't remember. It was right around there, though. It was a lot. It was over 100. And Wandering In, we're at, in book 5, we're at almost 300 characters. So those are
Travis?
there's there.
And let's see. For a series, it's probably in the high, like 170, 180, something like that. Lots of guards. For an individual book, at least as far as being like challenging and a bunch of voices, I had a book with 2 male speaking parts and like 75 female speaking parts, and almost all of them were women from the same families, like within a year or two of each other, that were only distinguished by name. It was like an alternate history where there was like one guy born for every like 30 women, so they would have these gigantic families of women and one dude who they traded as a dowry. Anyway, that was easily the most like challenging like single number of a bunch of voices, because it was just like, well, that's Jane and there's her sister Sue, and I guess maybe one of them is slightly older.
I would say that's one of the hardest situations in general. Like, in my opinion, like, consistently, if they're all similar ages, same gender, same place, like, of origin, like, that makes it once you get over, like, 5 or 6 people that are all the same age and all from the same area, it starts getting pretty hairy, admittedly. Like, you
I
run
have
out of
to
pitches and cadences.
I have to give a shout out to where my son and I are re-listening. Well, for me, it's I think the third or fourth time, but for my son, it's the first time. We're re-listening to the World of Wheel of Time series, and one of the things that super impressed me when I was first starting to get back into listening to audiobooks with Michael Kramer was that he had these characters all from the Two Rivers, and 3 of the boys who are buddies are all within weeks in the age of each other. They've all grown up in the same place. They all have the kind of the same accent, but the way he was able to distinguish between the 3 of them so subtly and yet so distinctly was really, really remarkable. And that was one of the things that made me just go, wait, narration is really, really awesome. This is incredible. And so, yeah, I was in awe of that. So yeah, it's an art to be able to have something that's just subtle enough that you can tell the difference between the 2 of them without having to do something so extreme or overt that you're like, here's a fairy and here's a troll and here's a dwarf or whatever. I find that really, really amazing.
And Luke?
Okay, so 2 things. First, am I the only one in a vertical frame and you guys are all horizontal?
Yes.
I think you're the only one on a phone.
No. Luke, you are perfectly fine.
Everything off, isn't it? It was driving me crazy.
With your technical difficulties, are you sure you should be messing with anything at this point?
No. This is all a dry run. We haven't gone on yet, have we?
Oh. Man.
We're just going through the questions.
Is this live? Are you going to... I don't do anything live. Didn't you get my rider? Hold on. I'm still working with it. I'm sorry. That's my hand.
I know.
Alaron is throwing shade.
We've got this one viewer, Alaron Kong, who's like, boo, Luke the millennial. I think that you should just drop him from a lot.
I'm old as shit, guys. You don't know it. Why are you my wife is handing me headphones. Apparently I need headphones. So. But we're on her phone, which has like 8% battery, so I can't unplug it. And she hands me these old ass headphones that I'm supposed to plug in. This is like a clown routine, you guys. I planned all of this ahead of time. This was all part of my shtick. This was a whole thing. So
well, we decided already that you were going to be David Blaine and you were doing some special one of your illusion stunts. That's what was actually happening here. So
yeah, no, actually, so to answer the question though, I'm amazed that people keep track. I have no idea how many character voices. Do you guys like count them? Are you like 1 and that's 2 and then 3? Oh my God, 50. Like, I have no idea. I think I'm maybe a little more by the seat of my pants there. That's probably what that is. As you can tell by my technical setup.
I keep voice files in studio.
I have files.
Studio One. Yeah, I got tracks, so I get a final count of them.
Can you come work for me? I need help, clearly.
I can barely manage my own crap.
I don't think you could afford her, Luke. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's probably true. Yeah.
So there was a question in the chat, and I think there was a couple of authors who actually answered it in the chat. Do you think the authors do all of this on purpose to you? And there is definitely authors who have said, absolutely, we torture our narrators, but we love it. And I think you all can agree to that as well, that your authors definitely torture you.
I complained about I wasn't really complaining. It was just like, it was like a running joke about the appearance of the word deus and how the fact that every fantasy world has at least one freaking.
Always. There's always a deus. Oh no, did we lose Travis?
Did I was gonna say, is Travis now
started writing them in the books?
Yes.
No, hopefully I'm okay. Everything just went weird.
You just
am I still here?
You froze for a moment. You're back now. Yep.
It's magic.
You're back.
I don't know.
You broke
after I told
a
few of
few
the authors I work with, the deuses broke it. After we told some of the authors, then they started specifically writing them in. So I had books that had like 30 deuses in one paragraph, and they just show up all the time now. It's guaranteed.
Yeah, it's very dangerous to call out authors on any of the stuff they do, because they will definitely go, okay, now we know what's going to make them scream or squirm or whatever. And then
don't ever complain that you've got a name with no vowels in it, because you're guaranteed to get more.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a Facebook user that doesn't come across with the name, but it says, I definitely don't ever make the most difficult names possible for Andy. I have a feeling that we might know who that could be.
I'm looking at it. It's dadgum KT. I'm looking at it. KT. And yeah, the German word that I am still saying wrong for the life of me.
I'm always stuck with that one thing where, like, I have a name and then I'll learn how to pronounce it, and then every damn time it comes up again, I have to look it up again. I can never remember how I pronounced it. Yep. And I'm like, I know I've said it to myself 15,000 times. Why can I not keep this in my brain? I said it 5 seconds ago in the last sentence. I cannot remember this damn name. Drives me nuts.
Somebody thinks you guys should all start charging per character. I think you guys would make a killing off of that one.
All of a sudden, all LitRPG books have like 3 characters in them. Watch this happen.
Yeah. It's going to backfire on everyone. Don't recommend this. So there's another question of, have you ever disagreed with an author about a voice that they have wanted for a character? Luke, let's go start with you.
Never. I don't think I've disagreed. I think when you do this, you learn, like, anyone that gives you anything, you're like, yes, please. Because so much we have to do on our own. So if an author's like this, you're like, I'll run with that. Thank you. Anything else you want to give me? Because it's so much to come up with on your own. So I've always enjoyed that. I will say for Aileron, we went through some character work on In God's Eye for the lead, and I think he originally told me something. I tried that, and it was like that quiet where we were like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. So he was good enough to be gracious, and we moved into a different direction, and it worked better. But it's so invaluable having people that, like, care about it and want to have things sound good and have a good ear for it. And I've been really lucky with the authors I've worked with that they have a real appreciation for the medium. So to me, it's been great to have that source material. I mean, it feels like you're kind of in a dream. It'd be like if you're on Star Wars and you could go to George Lucas and be like, how exactly is it pronounced? I mean, it feels cool. So it's actually a really cool part of the job.
Steve?
Yeah, I haven't had anything where it's like I've dramatically disagreed with anything that they've said, but I have had a situation where, like, I mean, some authors, they definitely get into audiobooks and they know exactly what they want and they listen to audiobooks so they understand it. But sometimes you'll have some of them that are very new to the medium and don't really know much about it. And so then they'll have like a suggestion or an idea and you'll just be like, because I had, for example, I had one author who started listening to audiobooks when they were like interested in this, and they were listening to a lot of YA, and they had one particular narrator who did everything in a British accent, and they thought, that sounds amazing. It's really awesome. I think that we should have the main character have a British accent. That would sound really cool. And I'm like, okay, is the whole book set in a British place? Because I knew it wasn't any place on Earth. And they're like, well, no, everyone else will sound American. And I'm like, okay, did they emigrate there? No, they've been born and raised there the whole life. And I'm like, then why would they have a British accent? Like, are they just putting that on? Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I guess that doesn't really make sense, does it? Okay, no, never mind. And so then you'll have conversations like that at times, but I've never had anyone come to me and be like, I don't want that accent, or I think that they should sound like this. And I'm like, I don't think that that's a good idea. But yeah.
Andy?
You're going to have to forgive me because I just blanked on what the fucking question was. Like, literally in the last 3 seconds, I was formulating my response and then I thought about something else. And
what's your favorite dog?
You were blown away by how glorious my voice is.
I was so into what Steve's answer was.
Have you ever
What
disagreed
the
with an
hell is he
author about
talking
a...
It
about?
was.
He just drones
Okay.
on and on about nothing. I can't even
No,
There you
focus.
go.
that was what it was. I haven't had a disagreement. Like basically, like the only time I've ever had any trouble with that was I basically like it's always either we're in sync or I just take what they said and do that because I can usually make that work. The only time I've ever had a problem with it is one book where the dialogue conflicted with the accent they wanted. So the dialogue was written with one accent, very heavily like dialectically written, and then they wanted it in a different accent. And so there were words and phrases and stuff that were very distinctive to a certain accent, and they wanted it in a similar but different accent. So I had to alter the text if we ended up deciding on altering the text to fit and just kind of removing the slang. But that was it. Usually I just either make it work or talk to him about it.
And Travis.
I pretty much always try and respect whatever the author wants to do. The only exceptions to that were they're always just suggestions. For instance, I had a book that had two characters that were both basically comic relief characters that were kind of snarky, and they both had British accents, and they both acted opposite each other. And they didn't need to have British accents. It was a fantasy world, and I was like, we can probably make them contrast better if we don't. So I'll do it if you want, but we can probably have these they can strike a better contrast, especially when they're bantering with each other if we don't, given that they have like a similar tone. And then the only other one was kind of similar to what Andy had, where someone had written the accent in phonetically but that didn't actually match the accent at all. So if you said it, it didn't sound even remotely like the accent that it said it was. So we kind of like did sort of this middle of the road, slightly altering the text, trying to respect the accent thing. That's sort of a weird borderline case, but
Okay. So this is going to be kind of two questions in one. So what is your biggest challenge of coming up with voicing the opposite gender? And then there is a specific call out to Steve to demonstrate finding the perfect laugh for a female character. So I figured that those two can go together. And if anyone else wants to demonstrate as well, whether it's an opposite gender piece or anything else for your challenge. And we're going to start with Steve.
Yeah.
No, we don't need to do that, do we?
No.
Oh my gosh.
You can blame Geneva for this one.
I will definitely 100% blame Geneva for this one. There, I was doing a book where everyone like it actually in the text, because sometimes when it's not in the text and they say they laughed or they whatever, you can choose whether you feel it's appropriate for you to put a chuckle or a laugh at the beginning or end of whatever they're saying. This one would actually have ha ha ha, blah ha ha, meh ha ha, he all through the text on all of these different characters. And I was doing I can't even remember how it went, but there was like a girl that was supposed to be being super sultry and sexy and laughing, and it had like this meh, and I'm trying to remember how I was trying to figure out how to do it, because we were like meh, and then I just started going more and more. It's like and I just started going maniacally laughing, and it gets to the point where people on my Discord are going, is Steve okay? Do we need to call someone? What is happening here? So yeah, okay. We have some blooper reels of that coming in another book, in a book that's coming out very soon, where I think we ended up with like 11 and a half minutes of bloopers at the end of the book. And that was what it got cut down to by Podium. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot.
Let's go with Travis.
Female voices.
Yes.
I mean, I have a whole process for doing that. In the end, female voices are all still characters. So it's not so much about doing just a female voice, because there might be female voices that are lower than my actual voice, for instance. So it's mostly about the character. There's like
your
some
voice is pretty
baseline
low.
things.
I find that hard to believe.
Some people have like, you get the smoker old lady character, and it's happened that it's like that she's actually a little lower than me. Usually it involves, moving where the resonance is from my chest up a little bit further toward, the base of my throat. But mostly it's about the character. So it's really pretty character specific.
And let's go with Luke.
Well, I'm curious about Andrea's answer to how does she voice female characters?
I'm saving her for last.
That's the hardest part. I'll be honest. That's the preview. That's the hardest part.
Right. Well, I feel similar that like I really enjoy doing female characters. I feel like there's I don't know. I think I do less. I try to do less with female voices, maybe, because I'm more concerned that a guy putting on a lot will come off just kind of distracting from the story. So, but I do still play with pitch, tone, all the same things I do with any character, but based on who they are. Are they like a rough and tumble person who's been out working fields all the time, so they might have a little more husky tone, or they might be somebody that's very cultured and put together, and that's going to inform the tone. So again, it's just the factors that the author's given you. But I enjoy it. I mean, it's great to be able to play all different parts. You never get to do that in this profession in any other way. So it's kind of like, I feel like it's kind of sacred in a way, if that's weird. I don't know, but we get to do all these. I never get to play that. I never get to play a million of these parts. So it's enjoyable. I like it.
And Andy.
Well, for female characters, you have to grab your ovaries and grip them real hard. And the key is hanging on, and then you can do it.
This said opposite gender, so if that's what you want to go with, I'm okay.
No, male characters, it's I don't have the highest female voice in the world, so it makes it a little bit more. I have a little bit more flexibility for male characters than if I had a much higher female voice. But it typically like Travis said, it comes down to the character. It comes down to just trying to get the character's tone right and who they are. But if it's a guy, it's easier for me to add some gruff in. Like if I just add a growl into their voice, that's like an instant way to make a guy, you know? Especially with accents. Like a New York accent almost always sounds like a guy for me. But then you can do the Cockney guy, because that makes him like a fucking god. And I'll make it all my teeth, and I'll make his mouth all wide. But it tricks like that, making your mouth wider, or speaking downward at the end of sentences, shortening vowels and hitting consonants harder, not your mic harder. Sorry, smacked my mic for talking with my hands. But yeah, those are the main things. If you're a female character, if you're a female person trying to play a male character and you have a female sounding voice, then it's basically shorter vowels, harder consonants, downward at the end of sentences, speak with confidence. Little stuff like that, that'll help trigger a male thought as to singing through vowels and having more tonality, and your sentences will sound more feminine. It's usually what I'll try to kind of stick to, or maybe the person doesn't at all adhere to that and I do something completely different. But those are the general guidelines in my head.
So Alaron wants to know if you use other voices at home on a regular basis, and does your significant other love or hate it? I'm going to start with Travis this time.
I don't even talk if I'm not in this box.
Well, okay then. Anyone whoever wants to go next?
I do, and I have a wonderful wife who tells me she loves it, and that's all I need to know.
She's right there in that booth, isn't she? Do you need to blink
no,
twice
she's been
if you're
handing
okay?
me stuff all the time. Yeah, no, she's the best. But yeah, dogs, people. Yeah, if you come and contact me, you can guarantee that I'll go home later that night and try to do an impression of you. Probably, yes. Sorry, I don't know if that's bad.
Sorry, was that you practicing your Canadian?
No, I thought Andrea was doing your voice earlier when she was like, "Yeah, this guy." I was like, "Oh, that sounds like Campbell." I mean, come on, spot on.
I also have a wonderful wife. Go ahead.
I knew it was going to happen. I knew.
Guys, would you just stop competing?
Well, it's not competing. She's my twin. We have this running gag between Andy and I that we are so like-minded, and we have such a similar thought process and disposition and very same insecurities and all kinds of stuff that I'm like, we were separated at birth somehow. I don't know how that worked out, but
we even get our speak up bravery at exactly the same time, and both of us go to dadgummit. You let me go first last time, so is this your turn to go first?
I forgot what I was going to say, so it doesn't matter. So go ahead.
You have a wonderful wife. Voices on
Oh,
the side.
At
I
home.
also have a wonderful wife. However, my wife is like, "Ooh, no, please stop! Don't do that." I just no. She has her BA in linguistics, and so anytime I'm trying to play with any kind of accent or anything, she's like, "No, nobody should be doing any accent except their own native accent. That's the only thing that should be happening." She's not a fan of voices. She doesn't like it. So when my boys I'm taking them to school, then I'll play around with voices or accents or different character stuff, and then they'll get into it, and then they do it in front of my wife, and she's too caring about their developing emotional security that she won't tell them to stop it. So then she has to suffer through that, and I get blamed later, and I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I didn't do it, it wasn't me. But yeah, no, that's I try to refrain
It wasn't
from
me, as if there's some other guy that just makes random
no,
voices
I
for a
wasn't the
living,
one making the
living
voice
in
in
the
front
house
of
with
her.
him. I
I
don't know
wasn't
what
the
you
one.
got.
I wasn't the one making the voice in front of her. It
TikTok.
was the boys that were doing it, not me. So I feel bad. I'm like, they have their own autonomy. They can make decisions for themselves. You can't blame me for that.
They're like 3 years old, probably.
She is not watching this. It is okay.
Yeah, no, she's not. No, she wouldn't watch this. It's okay.
But this is recorded
That's okay. She still
for
won't watch
quality assurance purposes, of course. Andy. Oh,
just
sorry,
gonna
Steve.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Nope, I'm sorry
I
now.
still interrupted Steve, even when someone said my name.
That's because Steve never shuts up. That's the problem.
No, I think Luke had something with the animals thing. I really, unless I'm like practicing an accent or something, then I don't typically do it around the house. People ask me that a lot. Like, do you ever mess with people on the phone and stuff? Usually I'm pretty focused when I'm trying to get something like that done. So I just use everybody's like usual phone voice when I'm talking on the phone. But around the house, my husband's also a voice actor. So outside of us just messing around or role playing, like doing Dungeons and Dragons and that kind of thing, I'll use it during that. But just day-to-day life, for the most part, I don't make like tomatoes talk in an accent. But the dogs absolutely do. River is the Taco Bell dog. Jill sounds like a bird, and Vlad, our German Shepherd, has a very sexy German accent. So they all have their own thing going on.
Okay. Now I'm never gonna think of your dog as anything else.
Right? Once you have it, it never leaves. It's amazing. He's like, this is a super trooper. We were going way too fast.
So how have you handled an emotional moment in a book? Do you have to prep extra hard for that moment, or do you just hit it with all you got? We're gonna start with Andy, so nobody else interrupts you, or you interrupt anyone else.
No, I feel like I'm interrupting everybody else. No, not really. I'll think about while I'm reading it and stuff, it'll settle in and I'll try to wrap my head around it, but I don't like have to prep extra hard for it or anything. I just know it's coming. So it still, I will still cry in the booth. I will still break down because I'm experiencing the moment all over again while I'm narrating. And there are certain scenes in certain books that I've had, they will take 45 minutes to get out one paragraph because I'm just so choked up and frozen. But as far as prepping it before, not really. They're just another part of the process for the most part in my head.
I'll go with Steve now.
I'm very similar. I don't spend extra time prepping them necessarily, but when I'm in the booth, sometimes I'll get into that scene and I'll be able to hit it the note right off the key, and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly the way I want it, and I'll leave it. But there are times when I'll read a scene like that and I'll be like, you know what, I'm not connected to this the way I want to be. I feel like there's more in this scene and I want to give it the time that it is due. And so I'll stop, reset, go back a little bit, a couple of sentences or whatever, go again and give it the time that it needs to percolate or to have that effect that I feel like it deserves. So yeah.
Luke?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I was going to say something flippant, but then Steve had to be all like serious and real. So now I'll just look like an asshole if I say what I was going to say. So now,
well, I mean, is that different from?
No, I think that's true though. What you said was actually, it struck a chord with me because you're right. Like you have to take a pause a lot of times. I think a lot of times we get in the zone and we're working, and it's like a steam engine going, and we're getting through it, but we're connected. But then when you have something that's connecting in a way that's maybe not just slashing a goblin's face open, but something that has, a little heart to it, slowing down is always a good idea. Or maybe saying, I'm just going to try it again. Like, it's never a bad thing to try again. I mean, there are times you have to just a lot of times I go back to the first take, but it's never a bad thing to say, let's try it again and see, can I do it justice again, and which one's better. That's what the medium's so nice about. We can kind of tinker that way, but it's a careful process, because any time I go too deep, it starts to become more intellectual and less responsive and emotional. So a lot of times that first take is kind of better, and then sometimes it's better, but it might not be quite as clear if there's a lot of emotion coming through. So I've had to go back and do it with the same intent, but try to not have the nose pop in the middle of it because of the bubble that's bursting as my heart slowly crumbles from how sad it is.
So I mean, just like the rest of them, I don't have to prep either. I don't prep for it. It just hits you when it hits you, and the author's already writing in this emotion. So if you're reading it and narrating it, you're already doing it. And like everybody else, I've had to redo stuff a few times, especially if I get really weepy.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Your narrators have feelings.
No, it's acting. I'm acting feelings. So
okay.
I just want to there's a disclaimer. I'm sorry.
My apologies.
It's all a con.
So here's another one, and this one might be even more thoughtful than the emotional one. Have you ever taken over Yes, we are going deep here. Have you ever taken over a series from another narrator and that has taken over a series, and how did it affect your process? How did you handle coming in mid-series?
I've done that.
We'll start with
I've done
Luke.
it several times. It's not great. I think early on I felt really bad, and now I've learned it's just business. So there is a sense of like, what happened? A lot of times it's schedule. A lot of times it's just a number of things. But I think you have to listen to the source material, but I don't really prescribe to having to try to emulate somebody else. I'm being hired because I'm me and not that person. So I think changes are okay if somebody else takes over, because they're trying to make it their own and be honest to their own self. So I think it's maybe a little controversial, but yeah, you're coming in to do a job, not to just. It's different because look on with Avengers, and you've got that guy that was hired to replace the Red Skull, and he's just doing the Red Skull from the Red. I think that'd be really hard to do, but I get it, But I don't see that how you could move forward with a whole 20-hour book trying to be some other narrator. So I don't know. I went on a tangent on that, but yeah, it's happened.
I've had to do that. Yes.
Yeah.
Steve or Andy, have either of you had to do that?
I haven't had to do it, so I've re-recorded a series, but it hasn't even been released yet. So it's kind of, I have no dog in this fight, so I haven't had to fight that battle, so I couldn't comment. It looks very tough, and I've tried to avoid it because it is.
And I've had series taken over.
I've had
series taken over by other people too, so that happens.
Yeah, I took over one of Luke's.
Which one?
Pixel Dust.
Oh yeah. That was a good series, actually. I was glad.
It was a great series.
I was glad it kept going because it was good. I just didn't have time to do it, and yeah. So that worked out good. So, all good for everybody, especially the author and the fans. That was what I talked to Dakota about. Was like, because he talked to me about that, and I was like, yeah, dude, I can't fit it in. So let's get this. He's got 4 more books out or whatever. Let's do it. So yeah, that was cool.
I'm super anal retentive about it. I have a slightly different take on it, which is that it's going to be different, but that I treat it like trying to pick a replacement, like rebooting a series where the character is known, everybody knows what the character's supposed to sound like, but you're rebooting it, and so you've necessarily got different actors, but you're trying to accomplish some of the same things. So I prep a lot for it. And I go and get voice samples from the original one, and then I do my take on it, and I try and make sure that it aligns with the intent of the other one. So like the accent is similar, the overall tone is similar. Just like somebody gave me author notes. If the author said they were supposed to sound like this, it's my equivalent of author notes. So I've had to do it one time when the author passed away well deep into a series and I took over. And so I took a lot of time, and it was like, I want to honor what you did with the first books. I had the one where I took over for Luke, where I went and got I sampled every single character you did.
Yes.
And then I had
Those
another one which
residual
also
checks.
involved Luke, where there were two different narrators, where Luke had to take over for someone else. And then I was narrating a parallel series that referenced characters that appeared in both of your voicings. So I went and I got all of the books in audio from the author and sampled all of the characters, and in a few of them I split the difference. So I'm super anal retentive about it.
If I known that, I would have made it so much harder on you. I wish I would have.
That's why I'm never going to tell anybody until after the fact.
Okay.
I haven't ever had it happen where I had to take over a series. However, I've been dying to tell this story, because I have had it where I've had to work with authors who have a series with another narrator, and then I'm taking over at like not necessarily a spin-off series, but something different. And so when I was first getting into narration, this is my story, please bear with me. I'll try and make it as succinct as possible. But I love this because I was getting into narrating, and I was looking for stuff that I could do as a narrator. And there was a book that I had read a couple of years beforehand, and it was called The Game by Terry Schott. And I thought, man, this is a really incredible series. I wonder if it's ever been made into audio. I should maybe see if I could try and narrate it. And so I started looking into it, and yes, it had been done, and it had been narrated, and it was done by some guy named Luke Daniels. I'd never heard of him before. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I should listen. Maybe he didn't do a very good job. I had no idea who he was. And so I'm not lying. I had no idea who he was. And so I started listening to this, and I was like, dang, this guy's actually pretty good. Like, wow, this is really good. How have I never heard of this guy before? That week, lo and behold, he gets inducted into the Audiobook Hall of Fame. And I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. All right. Okay, fair enough. And so then it ended up that I ended up doing another series with Terry Schott as well. And I was panicking so much because his one series that you had done was really, really popular. Everyone knew who it was. And I thought his fandom is going to rip me to shreds because it's not Luke friggin' Daniels. And then I had another author that had asked me to do a book in a series that you had done that was the main series, and I was doing a spinoff, and it was another Luke Daniels book. And so I was like, oh no, I'm going to get ripped to shreds again. And I got a review in there that said, this book is awesome. I loved it. And Luke is great as always. And I was like, okay, I'll take that as a compliment. Yes! Because Luke Daniels is great as always. And I was like, I'm not upset by that. And I have been confused way too often that it's like, I thought that was Luke Daniels. I thought that was Luke. It sounds like Luke. And so many times I get reviews or comments about it must be Luke Daniels. And I was like, you know what? I'm totally okay with that one. So
you worked at Brilliance a bit, didn't you?
No, I've not done anything.
You haven't?
Yet. No.
Yeah, though that's where I got my start. But that's good. I've got some more books that you can let. I've got a couple of sequels that I'm happy to have you sub in for me. I always tell my wife, she's like, I wish I could record for you and you could do the laundry. And I was like, yeah, let's try that. Let's see. Maybe you'd probably be better than me. And then I'd be out of a job.
I'm going to go off of what Steve started and ask the rest of you guys, how did you guys get your start? And let's go with Luke. You kind of already touched on it a little bit.
Yeah, the Brilliance was the company I first started with. My older brother, I have three brothers. Two brothers. My oldest brother worked brilliance. We've come from Michigan, and it's a company that's now owned by Amazon, and they produce quite a bit of audiobooks, but they were around back in the 70s, and they got their start because they did I love telling this story because it's so antiquated, but cool. They were the ones that came up with the formula for how to like switch tapes, so you could like turn your tape over and listen to the other side. If you ever listened to books on tape on back in the day. And so they did mainly for like truckers and blind people, and they had like a whole bunch of stuff. And then the whole boom happened, and I started working for them, and it was in a studio environment, not like this is my house. So we had actual, 10 rooms or something like that. And it was the paper days. So we had the paper instead of iPads and all that. We'd have a stack. My trunk used to be filled. If I ever got in an accident, it would look like some like accountant got smashed because it was just filled with paper. And they would ship them out all the time, and you'd highlight them with actual highlighters. And so that was the old days. I'd like to think of it as the Old West, because it was right before Audible kind of came on the scene and things kind of blew up more and got a wider audience. And now you've got stuff that's, narrated by, the Queen of England. I'm pretty sure she has a book out. Check it. I don't know. But it was a really cool time to be involved, because I could sense there's like a lot of people are using their phones more and are able to connect that way, and everybody's driving. So it kind of, I watched that grow up, and that was a really cool time to be in it. And it was really good because I was able to work with other people that had done it before. So I learned a lot from them early on. Now I think it's really hard for people who are starting out in like a home studio to have any sort of mentorship or learn from people that know stuff that you don't, because believe it or not, they do.
So before I go to Travis and Andy, I am going to say that we are planning on probably going a little bit over just so that they can get the answers in. And we do have a couple of other questions. So if we want to stay on, we do have permission to go a little bit longer than the allotted time to 9, since we are 3 minutes of. So going to go to Travis on how did you get your start?
So I was a game developer. I did it for 20 years. And this was never a twinkle in my eye at all. I read stories to my wife and my kids. I really enjoyed doing it. I like doing the voices. I've read an ungodly amount of Harry Potter. And I picked up the equipment because I wanted to use it for VO recording for games that I was making at the time. And then I happened to stumble across ACX at the same time, and my kids didn't need me to read them stories anymore. So I thought, well, that would be kind of cool. And so I ended up doing it on the side, and I ended up liking it so much that I kept doing it. And now I do it full time, and I retired from game development because it's actually cooler than making video games.
Good
Andy?
answer.
Oh, mine was I was really enraptured by Travis's response. I'm just really enjoying being here with you guys. Anyway, no, mine was I had gotten disabled. I used to be a graphic designer and like a manager in an office, and I'd gotten disabled and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went back to college for vocal work. And basically while I was there, my husband found Other Life Dreams, which is a lit RPG from kind of early in the genre. And he basically found that, introduced me. He had me listen to the audiobook because it was by Jeff Hayes, and Jeff Hayes has amazing female voices. And he wanted me to listen to this guy doing these female voices that were just incredible. And so I said, okay. And up to that point, my only audiobooks had basically been, like I'd listened to Scott Brick's Diablo. I'd listened to a bunch of Mark Thompson's Star Wars books. But other than that, I really hadn't heard that many like character actor audiobooks. So I didn't know that was a thing for the most part. And then Hayes showed me Other Life and became friends with Will De'Aaron, and William De'Aaron's the one who convinced me to become a voice actor. He actually just pestered me about it because he wanted to do another series that had more adult content in it, and he didn't want it read by a male. And so he bothered me about it and convinced me finally that I should just try out and see, because I had the equipment from wanting to do a podcast before. And I said, all right, fine. And he showed me what ACX was. So I was convinced by a friend to try out for my first book on ACX, and then the rest is kind of history. I figured out I was okay at it, so I just kept doing it.
Yeah, only okay. That's only okay.
Thank you.
Just a little. Just so there's probably about 2 or 3 questions more that I do want to touch on because some of them have been asked repeatedly from other people in the chat. So I do want to try to get to those. We've had such a great session so far. So there is an author who wants to know how much you guys love or hate stat boxes and reading them. Or if you are indifferent.
I love it because I get paid the same amount if the word is in a stat box as if it's in the normal. So it's just another word to me. I don't care how you put them in there. I'll just read them. No, but I have found I've enjoyed like kind of leaning into the stat box and trying to discover what that is. I was never a gamer, and later in life, I've kind of started to do it. Very little, but just on my phone. Like, what is this all about? Like loot boxes and scores and ranking and stuff. And like, I've kind of become like this little, like, I was like, oh, it did tick this thing in me that I thought I get that kind of wanting to level up. Like the thing I love so much about the genre is that desire to self-betterment. Like there's no genre that kind of focuses on like working hard. Like, you know what I mean? In the old days, video games were the way that you didn't work hard. You know what I mean? But it's all about this like self-development and like category and stuff like that. So I've actually kind of gotten into them and what they actually mean. And then I treat it as a character. So what's the stat box for this book? Is it kind of like an upper crust British person who's very like da-da-da? Or is it like with... what was it? Yeah, that's what it was with Aleron's book. He wanted, we did Liam Neeson for the ones. So everything was kind of like, you've stolen my wife. You know, it's like very like intense. And I love that. And so opening that up to be its own character makes sense to me. So that's my answer.
Let's go with Andy.
I'm kind of neutral on stat boxes. They don't show up as much anymore in the books that I narrate. Like a lot of the ones that I've narrated lately have been kind of more gamelit than LitRPG. The difference is kind of one of the big differences is the stat boxes. And it's one of them at least. But they've been more gamelit focused. I have done books with stat blocks in them, but not enough to like annoy me or anything. They're just more text, and I'm with Luke. You kind of just treat it like a separate character. I knew how those things sounded because I went into it as a gamer, so I knew what that stuff all was. So I knew what it sounded like when they read it to me on the game, so I just kind of wanted to make it sound like that. It seemed right. So I just treated it like Gladys or anybody else, you know. It made sense in my head.
Steve?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what they're talking about. You try and make it so that you're not treating it like you would in some other type of genre where if they're giving a recipe or a list or whatever, and you want to make sure that they're clearly getting what's going on in some nonfiction, you're going to want to maybe slow down a little bit for the first one, and you want to make sure that you have an interesting aspect to that stat. But then as it goes on, you want to maybe punch it up a little bit if they get a bit repetitive. But other than that, yeah, it's just trying to make it as interesting and part of the story as you possibly can.
I don't mind doing them. I have lots of really specific rules about how I do them, as far as what pitches you use and how you alter those pitches to separate data, and spatially positioning things left and right when you have data and then a data type. I'm really nerdy about it, but I mean, I also do it like I would cast somebody in VO to do it. I do have two things that are always kind of like a pain. One is row column data, which is always a pain to do because the column headers don't exist on the rows. So you sometimes have to come up with a clever way to use the column headers again to make the row data make any kind of sense. So that's always somewhat challenging. And one time I had a book, which will remain nameless, where all of the characters went to a separate like netherworld for like half of a book where all of their level ups and stats accrued over that. And then there were 3 chapters of reading them once they returned to the real world. Which was slightly interesting.
Wait, you said you have specific pitches and stuff. I can't remember specifically. I've listened to a few of your books, but I can't remember specifically. Do you do the pause before the number type thing, where it's like
a lot of it? I try and
strength,
keep really
5.
brisk. I try and keep it really brisk. So there's a slight pause and then have it be repetitive. But a lot of it is actually how I incline my head to the mic, up, down, slight differences in pitch, doing like this separation because people can hear it. It's subtle, but it does.
Half the time I'm
spatially
just
do
trying to
this.
figure out which one's an adjective, and when they're like power 3 tool phase, I'm like, I don't know which word to hit in that to make it sound real. Like power 2 phase, what, like
The ones where
you're
you
like,
get like an
oh.
actual data formula with params, those are always good.
And which has been asked a couple of times in this chat, is what would be your recommendation or your advice to someone who would be considering looking into narration, whether as we can all see, you guys are in your studios. What would you recommend for maybe equipment, or what they should look into for even considering looking at starting? Let's go with Travis.
Oh, I have so much information. I'm not going to say it all here. I've got a whole YouTube video on equipment that's required for like starting up on audiobook narration with specific equipment types, the things you need to look at, basic budget, what you need for a recording space. I mean, generally you're looking at $500 to $600 for the amount of equipment that you need. If you get decent equipment that'll do reasonable quality work. But the biggest thing is having a place to record that doesn't sound like crap, which mostly means treating it. You can do a lot to get rid of sounds that impinge, but the echo of your voice bouncing off of hard walls is a big deal. So if you got a walk-in closet with clothes, that's the biggest thing you need to do. The other one is to go and sit down and read out loud for 2 hours and make sure you don't loathe it.
Yeah.
And do that several times before you spend any money doing this. Make sure that you actually enjoy doing this, because making it a regular thing that you can get yourself to do every day is kind of a big deal. Apart from that, there's so many resources, and there's no way I could recap them all here, but narratorsroadmap.com has a ton of that kind of aggregated together for you to go through, and you can get an overview of it, and then you can kind of decide if it's something you would actually like to do. But it's an awesome industry filled with really cool people that is super amazing. So if you like it, do it.
Andy?
I'm just gonna add, I'm just gonna say what he said for the better part of it. Travis really legitimately, Travis actually has resources for us that he's created. Travis is a coach type person. He makes videos and stuff. So listen to him when he's saying he has videos up for this, for all the tech stuff and everything. There is nothing that I'm going to say that's going to be better than what he said. I'll say, listen to audiobooks.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to audiobooks. Listen to lots of audiobooks. Listen to the types of audiobooks you want to do. Pick your genre that you think you're going to be good at, that you enjoy, because you're going to be reading a lot of it. And listen. Just listen. What's big there? Do they do characters there? Is it primarily storyteller type, where it's not as many really heavily inflected characters? Research your genre, that kind of stuff. That's more deep cut stuff. But outside of the tech kind of thing, you start getting into that kind of important stuff where you want to pick what you want to do and figure out what that's going to require, and get coaching. Learn how to act. Don't just make sure that you have the skill set in place for that kind of stuff, because anybody can go out and buy a microphone. Not everybody can sell books if you don't know what you're doing. So know what you're doing when you buy the microphone and stuff. That's probably one of the biggest things, because otherwise you're going to get real frustrated real fast, and it's going to turn into a money sink rather than something, and it will take a while to make money. So don't expect it to be fast money either.
Steve?
Just to piggyback on what Travis and Andy said, before you go and spend any money on equipment or on that kind of stuff, make sure that you're going to love being in a small enclosed space for hours at a time, reading, and then stopping. This is the important thing, stopping every time you make a mistake and going and starting that sentence again and continuing on, because that's going to be your life. And if you can't handle it for an hour or two in the evening for a week or 2 weeks, and if you actually do that and then you still love it, and I mean love it, then you might be on a place where you want to start looking at equipment and stuff. But that is so much of what we do, is making sure that you're actually paying attention to what you're reading, focused on it, not just reading it out loud, but making sure that you're reading it out loud and accurately, and being intent with what you're reading, so that you're not just because it's not reading out loud. You're performing these books, especially in LitRPG. If you're interested in that genre, it is all about really performing. I like to call this Saturday morning cartoons for adults, right? So you really got to get into those characters and love doing it. And if you don't, then you're not going to love doing narration, because there's it's a hustle and it's hard and it is a lot of work. It's incredible. And these guys are amazing. And you get to see some awesome, awesome people. And I love what I do. But yeah, it's you want to make sure that it's what you really want to do before you start spending money on it, for sure.
Okay, don't tell anybody, but there's this guy down at the crossroads. He's got a tall hat. You show up at midnight. You offer him some silver coins. Let me tell you, you're going to be the next Scott Brick, y'all. That's all it takes. Just make that deal with the devil. I think listen to stuff. Again, everybody had great points. Listen to how people talk. Listen to how people relate. Listen to audiobooks. Listen to TV. Listen to anything. And then practice your ability to communicate and using your own voice. So it's both sides of the coin of being able to listen and then put it out there. And then obviously there's all the technical sides that you can learn, thankfully, because we have this thing called the interwebs. So if you're willing to put the work in, there's a lot of potential. And especially right now in the time that we're in, it's a great business. It's as an actor, it's one of the most creatively fulfilling things I've gotten to do. So I give wholeheartedly, go for it. Only thing you can do is fail and then you try something else. So there's lots of opportunities.
Absolutely. And so just a quick question out there for, I believe all of you actually do maybe have a Discord of your own. Just a quick, okay. So there was a question if you guys had Discords. I know that a few of you actually do your recording sometimes in your Discord as well. So that's always an enjoyable piece. I know I've popped in on at least Andy's on that, but I just wanted to make a note of that. So there are, for anyone who's looking for a Discord or figure out how to connect with you guys outside of this panel, there are those pieces. Do you want to just quickly say where that information can be found? Let's start with Luke.
The internet.
Thank you, Luke.
The interweb.
I actually just signed up today for Discord, so I'm a Discord newbie, so treat me nicely. But it's just Luke Daniels and then like 4 numbers, and it's got a big picture of my face. So I don't think there's any fake ones yet, but we'll see. So yeah, it sounds fun. I've heard about it, and I've seen these crazy people that do it live. But I'm excited to see what's there. So look me up.
Okay, Travis.
I could paste a link, but I don't know where I paste it. Do I have to paste it on Facebook to paste it into the chat? Because I don't know how else to do it. It's a long discord.gg/ a bunch of nonsense. So
I'm in there already. Just vamp Travis, and I'll post yours.
I'll put it in the private. I'll put it in the private chat, which I can actually chat into.
I think I've got one in there.
There you go. Yeah. So Geneva also says either the LitRPG group and or the LitCON Discord after the panel as well. So we will make sure that you have all of those resources to get to those Discords. So Andy also has one, and so does Steve, I believe, right? You mentioned it. Okay. So I'm going to wrap this up with one last question, and then we will. I will go over my code word because I have not done that yet, and then I will thank you all. So I'm just giving you guys the rest of what this will be, probably wrapping up in the next 15 or so. To end this, because I know some of you have ended your books with these, is a lot of the listeners and a lot of people here have enjoyed your bloopers. And I think they probably are wondering why the whole book isn't just bloopers, but they want to know how they can get more of that sometimes. But do you also enjoy having those bloopers in the books, or do you even do, or why or why not do you not do that? So I'll go with Andy.
Well, first off, you can listen to all of the bloopers on Discord every day because I stream Monday through Saturday, and there's a lot more of them there. I stream my whole workday, so the link I posted Monday through Saturday, I'm in there while I'm recording books. That's just that's my thing. It keeps me on tack. I know that these guys mostly do it too. I think you guys do it all the time now too, right? Steve and Travis.
Every day.
Yep. Yeah, all of us do. So between the 3 of us, you will be entertained by live bloopers as much as you can handle on Discord. But yeah, I actually really enjoy the bloopers. I haven't done them for a couple of books just because I moved, so the jovial have a lot of time to riff in character voice and like have a lot of fun. That was limited. I think that's one of the biggest things with bloopers is you got to have like enough time to actually joke and mess around and riff and actually get the bloopers out and the jokes out and make them funny and not just kind of pissed off sounding, because it's just listening to somebody be mad isn't necessarily the most entertaining thing, I don't think. But then if that part of it I find really enjoyable when I have time to do it, and that's been more of a thing since I moved, and I'm enjoying doing the bloopers again. I curse like a sailor though, so do not listen to mine unless
you are an incredible cursor. I learn something new every time I listen to you. I get a new education.
My favorite way to put it is I curse like a sailor with a tick on his nuts. Like that is it. The definition of it. It's bad. It's real bad.
That's also how she gets her male voices sometimes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Steve.
Yeah, I like doing bloopers. I like listening to bloopers. I've always loved bloopers. The challenge can be sometimes with bloopers because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think everyone here does punch and roll when they record. And so we're editing out all of the mistakes we made before while we're on the run. So unless you're marking or putting placers in there to go back and get those bloopers, it's they're kind of gone forever. And then it takes time to go back and grab those. So unless you're getting those bloopers written for you, or you're just doing an intentional blooper roll, you're having to go back and find those. So it takes time. So there are a couple of books that I've had requests, either from publishers or from authors, that I do a blooper reel. So I'll keep that in mind and try and make sure that I make notes of different places where I have hilariously made mistakes and collect those for them. But otherwise, yeah, it takes time to grab those. And if you're falling behind on your schedule, then you have to kind of power through without getting a chance to grab those little nuggets of joy for other people, not necessarily for yourself.
Luke, if somebody in the chat has also said that you apparently yell at Dakota Kraut a lot, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, well, not just in bloopers, but like when I get up in the morning, my alarm is just like Dakota. Like, that's how I do my meditation. I just curse his name over and over again. It fills me with such joy. I hope it does for you too. But no, I do. I'm not afraid. Although there are other times where someone will get me and I'll laugh, and so I'll include that, and I'll be like, "Oh shucks, Nasri or Alrod or Dakota, come on, you guys really got me with that one." But then there's other times I'm like, "What are you trying to have me say?" I like them. I just go as I go along and do the punch and roll. If I do it, I just take it and throw it down into another track, and then it stacks up. And then at the end of the book, I listen through and see, yeah, that one I just sound like offensive, like that. Not that I'm offensive, but like sometimes if I'm like, I'm like, are you making fun of someone? Or are you, it's so I have to be careful about it. But it's always fun at the end. It feels like kind of a bonus to be like, here's an encapsulation of how horrible this process was after you just listen to the encapsulation of how great this process was.
And Travis.
My bloopers are really boring because I record live, and I think I probably self-censor a lot when I record live. So I don't really go off that much when I make a mistake. So all my bloopers that I ever have all been written for me already. Will write really great bloopers, and they're a joy to read, but they're not my blooper. I just get to perform them, which is actually really pleasant. So yeah, no, I've never actually done my live read bloopers because they suck. They're just not funny.
Okay. Well, thank you again for joining us tonight, and it's been a pleasure to moderate this channel with you, especially this talkative group. So I do want to give out my code word, which is not enough. And again, the code word is not enough, which of course we have not enough of this panel as well. And just as a note to everyone who is in the chats is that there is a after party Discord any questions that I did not get to touch on tonight can definitely be posted in the Discord. The narrators who have joined us tonight can go over there and look at them and answer them. And there's also a voice chat that you can hop in and talk and even discuss more about this. I truly have appreciated each one of you taking your time tonight and
Thank you.
sharing what you can.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us,
Thank
and thanks for
you.
everyone for watching. I appreciate it.
It was a real pleasure to get to be here. So thank you very much.
It was
Absolutely.
fab.
This was awesome.
What
This
is
is
the
the first
code
time I got
word?
to
Oh,
meet Luke
there's-
Daniels, so
Wait,
I've been
what's the
nerding out a
code
little
word?
bit. So.
The code word is not enough, and that's for the giveaway. I'm
Okay,
not doing
so
the actual giveaway, right? Who are
Oh.
we giving away a narrator? Do they get to take them
I think
home tonight?
we should all do not enough in a different voice.
Oh, there you go.
All right, so I'll do it as my dog Milo, who is probably the most evil and dumb animal on the planet, and I mean that with all the love in my heart. So he would say, "Not enough."
Travis?
All right. We'll just do an orthos. Not enough. Not enough.
Ooh.
Loved it. Very good. Very good.
Steve?
Okay, we'll do Marvin the Martian. Not enough.
And Andy.
And I think this would be incomplete without an Antinium in here. So not enough.
Woo!
Beautiful. Thank you again all for joining us tonight. And I believe that will be the end of our panel.
All
So-
right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.